Hello everyone, and welcome back to the History of the Ancient World channel. Today, we're setting sail on a journey back in time, exploring a civilization that mastered the seas and left an indelible mark on history, yet often remains in the shadows of its more famous neighbors. We're talking about the ancient Phoenicians, the master mariners, shrewd traders, and brilliant innovators of the ancient Mediterranean. So, who were the Phoenicians? The name itself comes from the ancient Greeks, who called them Phoenices, possibly meaning purple people, a nod to the incredibly valuable purple dye they produced. But the Phoenicians themselves likely didn't use this name. They identified with their home cities, Byblos, Sidon, Tyre, and Arwad. These weren't parts of a unified empire, but independent city-states, each with its own king and government, nestled along the narrow coastal strip of what is modern-day Lebanon. This strategic location, squeezed between the mountains and the Mediterranean Sea, was both a challenge and an opportunity. With limited land for agriculture, they turned their gaze outward toward the vast blue expanse of the sea. And in doing so, they would connect the ancient world like never before. Their story begins in the Bronze Age. The earliest cities, like Byblos, were already thriving centers of trade by the 3rd millennium BC. They established crucial trade relationships with Egypt, exchanging their prized cedar wood, essential for shipbuilding and monumental construction, for Egyptian gold, papyrus, and grain. You can even find mentions of ships from Byblos in ancient Egyptian texts, highlighting just how deep these connections ran. However, the late Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BC brought chaos to the region. Major powers like the Hittite Empire crumbled, and Egypt's influence waned. But for the Phoenicians, this power vacuum was a golden opportunity. With the major players distracted, they seized their chance to dominate the maritime trade routes of the Mediterranean. This is where the Phoenician Golden Age truly begins. They weren't just sailors, they were pioneers. Their ships, the iconic birems with 2 rows of oars, were marvels of engineering, sturdy enough to withstand long voyages and fast enough to outrun pirates. They ventured further than anyone before them, establishing a vast network of trading posts and colonies across the Mediterranean. From Cyprus and Rhodes in the east, they pushed westward to Sicily, Sardinia, and the coasts of Spain. They even sailed through the daunting Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, into the Atlantic Ocean, possibly reaching the British Isles in search of tin and the western coast of Africa. Imagine the courage and skill it took to navigate these uncharted waters with only the stars and coastlines to guide them. What were they trading? Everything and anything of value. Their most famous export was, of course, the Tyrian purple dye. This incredibly vibrant and color-fast dye was extracted from a tiny sea snail, the murex. The process was painstaking. It took thousands of snails to produce just a single gram of dye, making it astronomically expensive. Literally worth more than its weight in gold. It became the ultimate status symbol, reserved for royalty, priests, and the super-rich. The color purple became synonymous with power and wealth, a legacy that has lasted for centuries. But their trade empire was built on more than just purple dye. From their homeland, they exported the magnificent cedars of Lebanon, fine textiles, intricate glassware, and beautifully crafted ivory and metalwork. Phoenician artisans were renowned for their skill, blending Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Aegean influences into a unique and desirable style. In return, they imported raw materials from across their network: silver and tin from Spain, copper from Cyprus, grain from Egypt, and exotic goods like ivory and ostrich eggs from Africa. They were the ultimate middlemen of the ancient world, connecting diverse cultures and economies. Their cities became bustling cosmopolitan hubs where goods, ideas, and people from all corners of the known world converged. Perhaps their most significant and lasting contribution to the world, however, wasn't a physical product. It was an idea: the alphabet. The Phoenicians didn't invent the concept of writing, but they perfected it for their own practical needs. Earlier writing systems like Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform were incredibly complex, with hundreds or even thousands of characters that took a lifetime to master. This limited literacy to a small, elite class of scribes. As merchants constantly needing to record transactions, keep ledgers, and communicate with partners across the sea, the Phoenicians needed something simpler, faster, and more efficient. So they developed a system with just 22 simple characters, where each symbol represented a consonant sound. This was a revolutionary breakthrough. It was easy to learn, easy to write, and incredibly adaptable. Phoenician traders and colonists carried this script with them throughout the Mediterranean. The Greeks adopted it, adding vowels and adapting it to their own language, which then formed the basis for the Latin alphabet used by the Romans. And from Latin, it evolved into the very alphabet I'm using to script this video, and you're using to read the title. Essentially, almost every modern Western alphabet can trace its ancestry back to those ancient Phoenician merchants. Think about that. Every time you write a shopping list or send a text message, you're using a legacy of the Phoenicians. Life in a Phoenician city-state was vibrant and centered around the harbor. The cities themselves were marvels of urban planning, often built on defensible islands or headlands. Tyre, for example, was originally an island city, making it a formidable fortress. Their society was hierarchical, with a king at the top, followed by a powerful merchant elite, priests, artisans, sailors, and laborers. Religion played a central role in their lives. They worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, with each city having its own patron deity. The chief gods were often El, the father of the gods, and Baal, a storm and fertility god. Their religious practices, which sometimes included rituals that their neighbors found shocking, have been a subject of much debate and controversy among historians. The independence of the Phoenician city-states eventually came under threat from the rise of powerful land-based empires. First the Assyrians, then the Babylonians, and later the Persians exerted control over the Phoenician homeland. They didn't destroy the cities, but instead co-opted their naval power for their own imperial ambitions. The Phoenician fleet became the backbone of the Persian navy, famously fighting against the Greeks in battles like Salamis. Throughout this period, they managed to maintain a degree of autonomy by paying hefty tributes of silver and providing ships and sailors. One Phoenician colony, however, would rise to eclipse its mother city and challenge the might of Rome itself: Carthage. Founded by colonists from Tyre around 814 BC on the coast of modern-day Tunisia, Carthage grew into a massive maritime empire in its own right. For centuries, it controlled the Western Mediterranean, and its conflict with the burgeoning Roman Republic led to the legendary Punic Wars. The story of Carthage and its brilliant general Hannibal Barca crossing the Alps with elephants is a tale for another day, but it stands as the ultimate testament to the Phoenician legacy of exploration and expansion. The final blow to Phoenician independence came with the arrival of Alexander the Great in 332 BC. Determined to conquer the Persian Empire, Alexander laid siege to the defiant island fortress of Tyre. The siege was one of the most remarkable engineering feats of the ancient world. For 7 months, the Tyrians held out, but Alexander's forces eventually built a causeway to the island, breached the walls, and conquered the city. This event marked the beginning of the end for Phoenician culture as a distinct entity. Under Hellenistic and later Roman rule, the Phoenician language and identity gradually faded, assimilated into the broader Greco-Roman world. So, why are the Phoenicians often overlooked? Partly because they didn't leave behind grand stone monuments like the pyramids of Egypt or the Parthenon of Athens. They weren't great writers of epic histories like Herodotus or Thucydides. Their legacy was more practical, more commercial. It's found in the trade goods discovered in shipwrecks at the bottom of the sea, in the genetic heritage of people across the Mediterranean, and most profoundly, in the letters we use to write every single day. They were the great connectors, the web builders of the ancient world. They braved the unknown, linked disparate cultures, and in their quest for commerce, they spread ideas that would fundamentally shape the future of civilization. The Phoenicians teach us that history isn't just made by great armies and powerful emperors. It's also shaped by daring sailors, clever merchants, and brilliant innovators, who, in pursuing their own goals, ended up changing the world forever. Thanks for joining us on this voyage into the past. What part of Phoenician history do you find most fascinating? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the history of the ancient world. See you next time!